Don't come to Mom's funeral.
She didn't want you there, my sister texted. I called her, shaking. What are you talking about? She laughed softly. You're not family anymore. I stared at the screen, and that's when I decided they'd regret it. My name is Rachel Bennett, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a project manager at a small construction firm.
Nothing glamorous, just steady work and long hours.
The kind of job where you learn to solve problems quietly, without drama, without anyone patting you on the back.
Growing up, I was the responsible one.
The fixer.
When Dad disappeared for weeks at a time, I was the one making sure the lights stayed on.
I was the one handing Mom cash from my part-time job before I even had a driver's license.
My older sister, though,
she was the one they always praised. She could do no wrong in their eyes, no matter what she did or didn't do. Mom and I used to be close, genuinely close.
She'd call me just to talk, not to ask for anything.
But after I moved out and stopped funding everyone's emergencies, something shifted. The warmth cooled. The calls got shorter. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they never expected me to have. I built my own life quietly.
No drama, no begging.
Just grit.
When Mom got sick, I offered help.
Real help. Researching doctors, covering her insurance gap, driving 3 hours to sit with her on bad days. They told me to stay out of it. We've got it handled, my brother said, and I believed him because I wanted to.
Then came the text telling me not to attend my own mother's funeral.
And that's when I understood.
This wasn't grief talking.
This was deliberate, calculated,
and it had been building for years.
If you've ever been pushed out of your own family like you simply didn't matter, hit that subscribe button. I know what it feels like to be erased. Drop a comment if you've ever been told you don't belong.
Click hype, and let's show them we're not invisible. The group text came on a Tuesday morning.
My sister and brother had sent it together, which told me it wasn't impulsive. They'd planned it. Mom had requested, they said, that I not attend the service. The word requested sat in my chest like a stone.
I called immediately.
My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mom would never say that. I told my sister.
You weren't here, my brother snapped.
You don't get a say. They had an answer for everything.
I'd abandoned the family, they said.
I'd stopped helping, stopped caring, stopped showing up.
Every sentence was a revision of history, and they delivered it like they'd rehearsed it. I drove to the church anyway.
The morning air smelled like rain-soaked pavement and cut grass, the kind of smell that usually calms me. Not that day. My sister was waiting outside on the steps.
She crossed her arms when she saw me pull up.
If you walk through those doors, I'll have you escorted out. People were watching.
Relatives I hadn't seen in years stood near the entrance, and I could feel their stares like heat on my skin.
My aunt murmured something to the woman beside her, loud enough for me to catch. I heard she didn't even visit. I left. Not because I was weak, but because I refused to let my mother's funeral become a scene.
I drove home gripping the steering wheel, and I cried once hard for about 10 minutes. Then I stopped.
2 weeks later, a formal letter arrived from the family attorney about the will reading. My siblings texted the same day. Don't bother coming.
It won't change anything. I typed back slowly and deliberately. Oh, I'll be there. I knew something they didn't.
And I was going to let them walk right into it. The weeks that followed were a quiet kind of war. My siblings started working the family network, calling cousins, talking to aunts and uncles, carefully planting their version of events. The story they told was consistent. Rachel cut Mom off. Rachel only cared about money. Rachel abandoned us when we needed her most.
My cousin called me one evening, her voice uncertain. Is it true you refused to help your Mom with her medical bills?
I didn't yell. I didn't fall apart.
I just said, no, and I can prove it. Then my sister started posting on social media.
Nothing direct. Nothing with my name. Just vague, sorrowful captions about family members who disappear when things get hard, who only surface when there's something to gain.
The comments filled up with sympathy. People who didn't know anything responded with broken heart emojis and words of support.
My brother went further.
When I drove to the family home to collect a few childhood things, a few photographs and a small jewelry box Mom had promised me years ago, he met me at the door and blocked it.
Those belong to us now, he said. I stood there for a moment, looking at him. Then I turned around and walked back to my car. That night, I sat at my kitchen table under the hum of the overhead light, and I spread everything out. Bank transfer records, emails, receipts. For years, I had been the quiet safety net. I found the transfers where I'd covered Mom's insurance premium 3 separate times when my Siblings had forgotten. I found the email thread where my brother
complained the payments were late as if I were a billing department. I found the months where I'd sent money during my own tight stretches without telling anyone. Because that's what you do when you love someone. They were already celebrating.
I heard through my sympathetic cousin that at a small family dinner I wasn't invited to, my brother had made a joke.
At least we don't have to split it 3 ways, he'd said, and everyone had laughed.
I heard that and felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Something colder and steadier than anger.
They think I'm weak, I told myself in the quiet of my apartment. They have no idea. What they didn't know was that MOM had talked to me during her final months.
Really talked. She'd call late at night sometimes, her voice tired but clear. And she'd say things she never said in front of the others.
I'm tired of them pressuring me about the house, she told me once. I saved that voicemail. I saved all of them.
I also had emails. My siblings had made the mistake of copying me on a few early threads before they realized I was a problem to be managed. In those threads, they discussed convincing MOM to simplify the will, to consolidate things, to make updates. Reading between the lines wasn't hard.
Then I found something else. Withdrawals from Mom's account during the last 6 months of her illness.
Regular amounts. Not enormous, but consistent.
Amounts that didn't match any bill I could identify.
I didn't confront anyone.
I sat with it.
I organized everything into a folder and I made a decision. I contacted the family attorney directly and requested a private meeting before the official will reading. His name was Mr. Whitaker, and I'd known him since I was a child. He was the kind of man who wore the same style of suit every decade and remembered details about every family he'd ever served. I sat across from him in his quiet office.
The room smelled like old paper and leather. A serious smell. A settling smell.
I slid the folder across the desk and watched him open it.
He read without speaking.
The clock on his wall was the only sound in the room.
When he looked up, his expression had changed.
This changes things, he said. I walked out of that meeting calm, composed, and ready. Mr. Whitaker had known our family for over 20 years. He'd watched me grow up in the background while my siblings received the attention and the credit. He wasn't sentimental about it, but he was observant. After reviewing my documents, he told me something I hadn't known. Your mother came to me concerned, he said. She suspected pressure. She wanted to make sure her wishes were protected. He told me MOM had amended her will in the final weeks of her life.
She'd done it quietly, without telling my siblings.
She'd also recorded an audio statement, notarized and dated, documenting her concerns about the people around her and the influence they were trying to exert. My siblings had no idea any of this existed. Meanwhile, they were already acting like the matter was settled. My sister had started calling contractors about the house before probate was even complete. My brother was talking to a real estate agent.
They moved through those weeks with complete confidence, certain that Rachel had already lost before the game even started.
At family gatherings I wasn't part of, they were gracious and victorious. They dismissed any mention of me with a wave. She'll get nothing. MOM made that clear. Mr. Whitaker advised me to say nothing. Don't respond. Don't react. Don't give them anything to prepare for.
So I didn't.
I showed up to the will reading in a plain dark blazer.
My sister glanced at me when I walked in and looked away like I was irrelevant.
My brother didn't even turn his head.
Extended relatives filled the chairs around the long conference table. The room was warm and close, the air carrying that particular mix of tension and performance that comes when money is involved.
My siblings whispered to each other.
Small confident smiles.
My brother leaned back in his chair like a man who'd already won. Mr. Whitaker entered and the room settled. He began reading in a measured, unhurried voice.
Small accounts were distributed, personal effects divided.
My siblings relaxed visibly with each line. Then Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat. The family home and majority of the estate are to be transferred to my daughter, Rachel Bennett. The room went completely still.
Then it broke apart all at once.
My sister stood up so fast her chair scraped back against the floor. That's not possible.
She wasn't even there.
Mr. Whitaker continued reading without raising his voice.
There is also a notarized addendum citing documented concerns of financial coercion and undue influence.
He reached over and pressed play on a small recorder sitting on the table.
Mom's voice filled the room, quiet,
a little tired, completely clear. Rachel never abandoned me. She protected me. I had promised myself I wouldn't cry. I kept that promise.
I reached into the folder I brought and placed the printed bank statements on the table in a neat stack.
My brother's face went pale. He stared at the papers like they were something he couldn't make sense of. Mr. Whitaker informed the room that a formal review of the account withdrawals would proceed. My sister turned to me.
Her voice was barely above a whisper.
You planned this. I looked at her for a moment before I answered.
No, I just refused to let you rewrite the truth. The relatives who had arrived so certain now sat quietly, looking at my siblings with something new in their expressions.
Doubt.
Recognition. The confident smiles were gone. There was nothing left to perform.
I stood.
I didn't need to say anything more. Mom's voice had already said it. She knew who stood by her. I said it once, quietly.
Then the room went silent in a way that said everything. The weeks after the reading were steady and deliberate.
I worked through probate carefully, consulting with Mr. Whitaker at every step, making sure everything was handled correctly and without drama. I allowed my siblings to collect their personal belongings from the house. I coordinated through the attorney.
I didn't block them. I didn't confront them. I simply made sure the boundaries were clear and documented. The financial investigation continued. The withdrawals were being reviewed, and my siblings were aware that this process had its own momentum now.
Slowly, extended family members began reaching out.
An aunt sent a message saying she was sorry for what she'd said at the church. A cousin called, awkward and sincere, and told me he'd had no idea. I thanked them and kept those conversations short. Forgiveness was something I'd decide about privately, on my own timeline.
I moved into the house for a short while. The rooms were quiet in the mornings and smelled faintly of the soap MOM had always used. I walked through each room slowly.
I wasn't trying to reclaim anything dramatic.
I just wanted to remember her correctly.
I set aside a portion of the inheritance to establish a small housing assistance fund in her name.
It felt right.
She had always worried about people losing their homes, and now something of hers would help prevent that. They tried to erase me, I said to no one in particular one morning, standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee in my hand. But truth doesn't stay buried. My siblings were left with damaged reputations and the particular loneliness that comes from being seen clearly. Not punished by me, just exposed by the truth. I chose peace, not because I wasn't hurt, but because bitterness is expensive and I'd already paid enough. Have you ever been excluded from something that was rightfully yours? Pushed aside during a time of grief when you were already hurting?
Tell me your story in the comments.
I read them.
Subscribe if you've been underestimated or erased by the people who were supposed to know you best. Click hype to help this story reach someone out there who was told they didn't belong.
Standing up for yourself is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, especially when it's your own family you're standing up to.
If you've been there, subscribe and become part of this community.
Let me know this story reached you by clicking hype.
And tell me where you're watching from.
I genuinely love seeing how far these stories travel.